And now, may I please invite our Honorable External Affairs Minister, Dr. Jaishankar, to make his remarks.
Lord Tariq Ahmed, High Commissioner Vikram Doraisamy, dear friends, it's great to see you all. A very good evening and Shubh Diwali. As many of you would know, I've been here, I think it's about 48 hours, less than that. And it's really been a very good visit. I was very thankful yesterday to the Prime Minister that on what was even otherwise a particularly busy day for him. It was also Remembrance Sunday. It was naturally Deepavali. And he was gracious enough, he and his wife, to receive us at 10 Downing Street. Spent a lot of time, spoke to us about his expectations and hopes of our relationship. And that in itself, I think, speaks so much about how far our ties have come. Today was a different day, equally good, but I would say it changed as the day progressed. And I, again, really valued the fact that the new Foreign Secretary, who we were reminded we met exactly 8 years ago, on the first day of his job, even before he addressed his own ministry personnel, was good enough again to meet me and my colleagues, and it was, I think, extremely satisfying to again hear from him the commitment and support for the relationship, and we spent a lot of time talking about how to take it forward. I also, of course, met the Home Secretary, recently the Foreign Secretary, and he has been a pillar of strength for the relationship in his previous job, in his current job, and we continue to count on him for again taking this relationship to a higher level. Among the other cabinet ministers I met was the Defence Secretary, Minister Grant Shapps, and in fact, early this morning, our Defence Minister Rajnath Singh Ji had also spoken to him. So that set the tone for what was a very, I think, a very good discussion between us on what we could do on defence and security. Now, I mention these meetings to you not just to tell you that I'm actually doing some work, but really to illustrate the point that we are today trying to reframe the relationship between India and the United Kingdom. And we are trying to do so because in the last many decades, our two countries have each changed profoundly. We have changed in ourselves, in our relationship, in our linkages and approaches to the world. And it's important, therefore, that we prepare a partnership for a contemporary era, that we look to explore new convergences, to see whether there is a potential out there, an unrealized potential out there that we could do more about realizing. And that, in many ways, is the exercise underway, and those were actually the meetings that I had. If one were to look at the United Kingdom, I think all of you, you live here, you will agree with me that it is both more global today and more globalized today. It is a far more multicultural society. It is a far more technology-centric economy. It has always had its economic salience for the world, but I would say with all the changes underway with technology and knowledge having such an importance in our lives, today there is a lot that the UK can contribute to the world. Where India is concerned, again, many of those changes are reflected today in its being a larger economy, in its emerging as an important engine of growth, of its being the fastest growing large economy today, of its influence and of its contribution to the global workplace, and of its being a much more powerful cultural force than it had been in the earlier times. So if one looks today at the current relationship, I could sum that up perhaps in a few numbers, that we have a trade which is in excess of 36 billion pounds annually, that we are actually the second largest investor in the United Kingdom, that we have a diaspora, and I can see not all 1.9 million people are in the room, but it's one of our largest and certainly one of our most contributing and I would say prestigious Indian community abroad, that we have 400,000 Indian citizens living in this country, of whom 185,000 are students. And the term living bridge, I think, is a good description. It doesn't do full justice perhaps, but in a way it really symbolizes the human aspect today of the connect between us. Now, some years earlier, we had tried to find ways of enhancing the quality of our ties, and we came up with something called Agenda 2030. This Agenda 2030 essentially put greater emphasis on connectivity, on trade, on working together when it comes to defense and security, on health, and on climate change. Today, to realize that, we are focusing on what is officially called an enhanced trade partnership. In common sense, it's called FTA, a free trade agreement. And that is today very much the focus of what the Indian and British systems are negotiating, and where we hope that we will find a landing point which will work for both of us. I also want to mention that the United Kingdom has in fact also reinvented its own role, its relationship with the world strategically. It considers itself today a Euro-Atlantic power, but with a tilt towards the Indo-Pacific. So what is our relationship today really about? I think you can see the human side of it, the economic side of it I've spoken about. But the fact is also, Lord Tariq congratulated us on our G20 performance and outcome. But I also want to say that that would not have been possible if the other members of the G20, particularly friends like the United Kingdom, had not helped us, had not worked with us to create that unanimity which we saw in Delhi 2 months ago. When we look at the crucial challenges facing the world today, it could be climate, it could be health, it could be maritime security, it could be terrorism. These are all challenges on which British interests and Indian interests converge very clearly. I think the more we work with each other, we find a greater comfort in doing so. And if one actually surveys global diplomacy today, more often than not, you would find India and the UK actually working side by side on these crucial issues. I would, because it's been some time since I myself came to the UK, the last time I was here, COVID was still on, I would like to take the occasion also to underline how closely we worked actually in combating the COVID. And I think our vaccine collaboration at that time was actually a standout case of really international relations delivering to combat the pandemic. So how do we in India see the UK? And I must say there are many UKs we see. There is the global Britain. There is the Atlantic, the Euro-Atlantic UK. There is the City of London, which has historically been a premier financial center for the international economy. There is this wonderful diaspora, which has been such an effective connect for India with this society. There is the innovation side of UK, there is the technology side of UK, there is the education side of UK. So when we look at a society with which we've had a long historical connect, I think it's different facets, each one of them is itself an avenue of collaboration. And when we put it together, its aggregate, its fusion today actually offers enormous possibilities of really taking this relationship to much higher heights. And I would say our ability to do so today is greater because our conversations are more open, they're more candid, in a way they're more equal. And I would also say that the interests, the mutuality of interest today is well recognized. Each one of us makes an effort to see that with every conversation, every discussion, every initiative, that the other one also comes out the better for it. And it's that consideration today, I think, which really marks this relationship. Now, having spoken about our relationship, let me also share with you what's happening in India. It's something which I often do when I come out of the country. It's perhaps that picture which I present to you is something which I know the Indian community abroad values greatly, because many of you, whatever the distance today, you follow whatever is happening in India very, very closely. Now, I began by saying the world has changed, our relationship has changed, UK has changed, India has changed. So you may ask me, what has changed in India? You know the answer. The answer is Modi. Now, I'll give you the long answer. I'll give you the long answer as well. And the long answer actually lies in this range of initiatives that all of you have heard about for the last 10 years. Initiatives like Beti Padhao, Beti Bachao, initiatives about building toilets for girls, about the Jan Dhan Yojana, the financial inclusion, about building houses, the Awas Yojana, about connecting houses to electricity, it's called Saubhagya, about the Jal Jeevan Mission, which gives piped water to every house, about what we are doing for farmers, it's a support system called the Kisan Samman Nidhi, about health, what is called Jan Arogya Yojana and Ayushman Bharat, or the various pension schemes which have been, again, the Atal scheme is the most prominent of them. So, and these other campaigns you've seen, the Digital India campaign, the Startup India campaign, the Skill India campaign. Now, you are all aware of this, but many of you would understandably look at it as something happening in a particular domain. You would appreciate, okay, because there's Beti Padhao, literacy rates for girls have gone up, which is correct. Because there are today toilets, girls find it easier to actually go to school. The school retention rates have gone up. Each one of these schemes has delivered. But the point I wish to make to you, it is when you connect these dots, It's really when you see the cumulative impact of all of this on the lives of people. That is the change which is underway in India. So when we look at the last 10 years, because by next year the government would be completing its second term, these 10 years have actually been a socio-economic revolution in India. It starts with reducing child and maternal mortality at birth, with nutrition for children, with better health, better school, narrowing the gender divide, creating more work opportunities, skilling people for the workplace. We have actually, in the last 10 years, if I were to take university education, we have actually created almost as many new universities and colleges in the last 10 years as the country had in the previous 65 years. That's the speed of it. So the cumulative impact of this is today changing India. So, certainly we speak, in terms of we are today the 5th largest economy. We would talk of the purchasing power parity aspect of it. But at the end of the day, when you look actually at the mindset of people, you look at connectivity, you look at something like the embrace of technology. That is really where the changes are taking place. And if we think today that India has a higher standing in the world, a lot of that derives from these changes that I'm speaking about. And these have been further facilitated by the fact that we have made it much easier to do business in India, that we have debureaucratized India, that anybody going to any office for any work will actually find, compared to 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 3 years ago, you fill in less forms. The system is much more responsive. The outcomes are much faster. And the fact that the infrastructure today is actually changing at an astonishing pace. I spoke to you about the fact that the educational institutions in India in the last decade have doubled over the previous 6. The same thing is happening with airports. In the last 10 years, the number of airports of this country have actually doubled. So that's the kind of India today that the world is looking at, that the UK is looking at. And I think what it does is, it's understandable if a country performs better, there is a natural desire to partner with it in every conceivable domain. So when you think of India today, and when you talk to your own friends and colleagues and people in your workplace, I would like you really to speak about this new India in the making. And India, one big change which is happening is on what we call Make in India. That we are trying to prove today that India can emerge as a manufacturing power. That it is within our capability both of our people and of our system, that we can make whatever else is made in the rest of the world. And of course, the big example that is often cited is that of Apple, but there are many more. And these are facilitated, in fact, by an initiative called Production-Linked Incentives, which is seeking to draw global manufacturing today to India. So there is actually not a day that passes where we don't see some big company from the world come to India and start the process of production out there. Now, making in India is one part of the change. Inventing in India is another. I spoke about how we all responded to the COVID challenge. And we did that, each one to the best of our ability. We emerged as one of the biggest vaccine producers of the world. In fact, the same vaccine which was made in multiple centers across the world. We actually ended up as the most efficient of the vaccine producers. But we made not just a vaccine, we also invented a vaccine. And whether it was the Covaxin which we did then, or the CoVIN platform, by which we actually in a very systematic way were able to do 2.5 billion vaccinations. Or if one looks today at a field like telecom, today the fastest 5G deployments which are taking place in the world are happening in India, and this is Indian 5G technology that is being done. Now, this is not just a country which is responding to contemporary challenges. It is also a country which is dreaming big, which is thinking big, which is executing big. And I can't find you a better example of that than the Chandrayaan mission to the moon. I was with the Prime Minister in South Africa when this happened. And we were in the midst of a major international conference. And, you know, the impact it has made on the thinking of the world, that such a complex mission could be executed in such a competitive manner. I think that the brand enhancement from Chandrayaan is actually phenomenal. And again, as I said, when people, today's image of India, it's not that old image. Today's image is a Covaxin, it's a 5G, it's a CoVIN, it's a Chandrayaan. This is the kind of India that actually the rest of the world is seeing. Now, having said that, let me also speak in a sense about the scale of the change. You know, I referred to a number of these campaigns and initiatives. Each one of these is continent-sized, definitely large country-sized. I mean, if you take any program and look at the numbers are simply staggering. You know, today, as part of our effort to ensure nutrition in the country, to make sure that nobody goes hungry, we provide every month food support for 800 million people. 800 million. We speak about financial inclusion. 450 million people regularly receive bank money in the banks because they are as vulnerable sections of the population entitled to do so. It could even be that program which you would have heard about replacing firewood with gas. You know, our numbers are bigger than the population of Germany. It's 95 million. When we speak about building houses, the government in the last decade has built almost 40 million houses. 40 million houses at 5 people per house is 1.5 times the population of Japan. So I want you to understand it's not just the change, it is the enormity of this change today which is taking place. You know, the result of this, I mean, by the end of this decade, it will be a very different society, which started off in 2014. And if there's one particular aspect of it which really should give us all cause for optimism, it is the enthusiasm with which India has embraced technology. That if you go, to a rediwala in India, a street vendor, they will ask you to pull out your phone and do the QR code and make that payment. And trust me, this is not anecdotal. It's not because I did it and you did it and he did it or she did it. Last month, the number of cashless payments in India were 10.5 billion. Okay? Now, just so that you understand what that number means. The entire payment in the United States for the entire year was 3 billion. Okay? China, entire year was 18 billion. Ours was 10.5 billion in a month. That, and you know, I say this to you because when a society embraces technology into its lifestyle, that's when you know the changes have really caught fire. So I want to share with you today that if there is that confidence in India, if there is that optimism, if we look and tell our own people, look, your life is going to be better year upon year, definitely by the end of this decade will be in a very different space. And as Prime Minister Modi tells us, in the next 25 years, this dream of becoming a developed nation, it is a dream which is very much driven by both the improving, the social churning and the improving human indices, but also this embrace of technology. So, and even as the country progresses, you can see this is a country which is full of ideas. People have spoken about climate change and worry about climate change. I mean, I wish they would put money proportional to the worry. It would help. But the fact is, if you look at the big changes, big ideas which have come, the International Solar Alliance, how to really propagate solar energy on a global scale, came from Prime Minister Modi at the Paris COP. The idea of a coalition for how do you build infrastructure, keeping in mind the possibility of disaster, because climate events are going to create that challenge more and more frequently. Or even something as simple and yet complex, like the food security problems that we all face, because of the Ukraine conflict and climate events. For the last few years, and there's a real worry about El Nino now, the world has struggled with shortages of wheat, of rice, and of inaccessibility and unaffordability of this. Now, the idea of shifting to millets, it's a very traditional idea, but it's a very novel idea. It's futuristic partly because it is bringing back in our memory something which we all, it was there in the back of our minds. We have heard that our forefathers, perhaps even some of us who are older, have ourselves seen the consumption of millets. And millets are today greener, they are climate friendly, they are more nutritious. There's no reason why, and they can be grown by small farmers in arid climates. Now, there's no reason why actually reliance on millet should not grow. But what had actually happened is, because of a variety of reasons, millets were grown and consumed by small farmers as they produced them. So you didn't see millet products in the market. But I can tell you, as someone who flew in on Vistara, when you board Vistara, you will get a millet, there's a biscuit out there. Please look at the label. That's a millet biscuit you are eating. And, today, millet flakes, millet biscuits, the use of this, the moment we commercialize it, get value add onto it, you will see the market take off. We have already seen, noting that. So I mentioned this to you today because India is not just changing, India is not just improving its own situation. India is also today a source of ideas. It is a contributor to initiatives and proposals actually for a better world, for a practical solver of the climate change challenges. But India is also in many ways a contributor to a world in distress. That we have seen, we of course saw that during COVID, when to more than almost 100 countries, we supplied vaccines. Many of them were small countries who had no other hope of getting vaccines. But if you look today from East Africa to the Pacific, if there is a natural disaster, it's more likely than not that India is actually the first responder. And that is a big responsibility today that we are shouldering. And sometimes it may be even in a zone beyond. I mean, we were one of the early countries to mobilize and go into Turkey when there was an earthquake. So the picture that I present to you is actually of a country on the move. A lot of things, very, deep changes happening there. The benefits of that, now that we are coming to a decade of that change, becoming apparent with each passing day. And when we then ascend to the international platform, a lot that we do at home, we also do abroad. Again, I come back to the G20. Quite honestly, not everybody bet on our being successful. Okay, to be frank. If we were, as I said, it was because every country in the room cooperated. And many of them understandably did so, because they realized that by doing so, they were actually reflecting the value of the relationship with India. Now, definitely the G20 in many ways saw us bridge the challenges of a very divided world. But if history remembers this G20 for a variety of reasons, prominent among them would be the fact that this was the G20 where, at India's instance, Africa got a seat on the table. And often when I go out, people ask me, saying, why did Prime Minister Modi, why was this so important? Because he personally made a push for this. To me, in many ways, our foreign policy is reflecting what is happening at home. At home, this policy of no one left behind, the idea that the most remote places of India get the benefits of development. And I myself, as a member of parliament from Gujarat, my development work is in what we call an aspirational district, a district where historically they have lagged behind in development, and today, thanks to the attention and the resources that they get, these districts are today catching up and sometimes even crossing those more developed. But this deep sense that nobody should be left behind is also reflected in international relations, and what we did for Africa abroad was exactly what we do at home in India. So let me therefore conclude by saying this. Clearly a closer relationship between India and UK will benefit both countries. It will benefit both countries. It's certainly something which the community, which is a living bridge, should welcome. But I want you to appreciate that there is a larger significance, there's a global significance for a stronger India-UK relationship. Today, one of the biggest problems the world faces is somehow the manner in which globalization unfolded in the last 30-odd years. It has led to a concentration of production in certain limited geographies. The India-UK relationship can actually contribute to making India and UK stronger factors in contemporary technology, in greater manufacturing, in science, in innovation, and in much more relevant ways today of modernizing the international economy. The India-UK relationship can actually also promote pluralism, democracy, respect for diversity in the world, because these are values and practices that we hold very dear in our own personal lives and in our collective lives at home. India and UK today, the we have a long history, and it's a very complex history. But I would say today, what we are trying to do is to make history a positive force. That the commonalities, the shared practices and institutions we have, the comfort that has come out of years of history, how do we make history work as a positive force? That too is a difference that we can make, and that too is something we are trying to demonstrate. So I would say that there have been times when in the past, maybe global developments had created some distance between us. Today, when we look at the very complex, the range of international challenges that we face, today actually the currents of global politics do bring our two countries together. But most of all, I think where I see the relationship really flowering is the fact that we have a wonderful diaspora which acts as a source of energy, as a motivator. It's your expectations, your aspirations, your demands at times, which will make us do more. And I can assure you that, as we look today at this relationship, it has an enormous promise that I'm very confident would be realized. So once again, I thank you today for joining us all on this occasion. I will be here for a little bit more time, but I certainly hope that this visit in many ways will help to set our relationship not just on a firmer footing, but really open up new pathways for collaboration. Once again, thank you very much. Namaskar.
Thank you very much, Honourable Minister, for your rousing words, especially describing all the plethora of progressive changes in our motherland, and of course the rich and syncretic